Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of this 4-part video series on StudyCast, which are audio podcast review sessions for students. In the first part we talked about kind of what is a StudyCast. In this second part, I want to share with you some examples of what a StudyCast sounds like. So what does a StudyCast sound like? So again, and just to back up real quickly, when I taught 4th and 5th grade, you can see the old little logo that I had. I used it to help students review for their social studies and their science tests. But I just want to kind of review, regardless, think of all the different possibilities. A StudyCast could be used for science, could be used for history or social studies, could be used to reinforce vocabulary. If you're a foreign language teacher, think about how you could use this, where you're introducing vocabulary or the conjugation of verbs in a foreign language. Just think about if this concept can really be applied to a lot of different content areas. It does not have to be just social studies or science. But I want to share with you, in case you're wondering, well, what might it sound like? This first one, I'm going to play a little clip. StudyCast intro is something that I recorded at the very beginning of the year and then sent it out to my students' families. So let's take a look at this.
Hi boys and girls, moms and dads. This is Mr. Coley, and thanks for listening to this introduction to StudyCast. What is StudyCast? Well, StudyCast is a podcast that I'll be creating for my students this year to help them study for their social studies and science tests. Basically, StudyCast is an audio review session that students can listen to as they prepare for their tests. During a StudyCast, I go over the notes and review the information presented in class, including examples and stories I may have shared in class but weren't included in the students' notes. StudyCasts are not intended to replace traditional studying, but rather to serve as an additional way to study.
So you can see there that that's just kind of an intro to the parents of kind of what is a StudyCast. And I want to focus in on the one thing that I said in that little intro was StudyCasts are not intended to replace traditional study. Rather, it's to provide an additional way to study. Again, on their phones while waiting for the bus, waiting for their rides. Maybe they're in the back of a car driving down to San Diego over the weekend or something like that. It's another way to study. So that was the intro. And now I want to play the beginning of the very first episode of the year so you can get an idea of what it sounds like. And again, I do have some introductory music here, but this is absolutely not necessary.
Hey boys and girls, this is Mr. Coley, and welcome to StudyCast number 1. Alright, in this broadcast, what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you review for the geography quiz that you're going to be taking in social studies. So before we get started, since this is the first broadcast of the school year, let me kind of explain how I'm going to do this. If you are home and you've got your social studies book and your social studies notes with you, you might want to go ahead and pause this broadcast, get your notes out so you can follow along with me. And if you don't have those things, not a problem at all. It's one of the beauty of the StudyCast. If you're listening on the go, if you've got this on a CD or you're listening on your iPod, sit back, relax, and just kind of listen. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to be on your quiz and exactly what you're going to need to know.
And that's what I do. I then take my notes. Let me go back into present mode here. I then take my notes and I just talk about them. And like I mentioned, the nice thing about a StudyCast, the beauty of it is things that we may not have written down, but if I shared an anecdote or a story in class, I go ahead and touch on that in the StudyCast. So if you want to listen to the full introduction and that full sample episode, you can go right there to brentcoley.com/StudyCast. The full version of the introduction and the first episode are on my website there on the StudyCast page. But this is a big thing that I want to, and you're going to see this throughout the video series. please don't forget this. A StudyCast is not meant to be a polished work of art. Okay? It's meant to help students study. It's meant to reinforce the content that you're teaching in class. I want to go back to the beginning. I had a little intro music at the beginning of my broadcast. Why? Because I'm just kind of a geek. I'm a nerd like that, and I liked to do that. Did that take a little extra time? Yes, it did. Do you need to do that at the beginning? No, you do not. Absolutely not, because that's not the purpose of this. This is not something that we're looking to make sound like a completely polished work of art. If it's just you talking, that's all it is. Because the point is not to make it sound like it's going to be a bestseller or hit the Billboard music charts. It's to reinforce the content that you're doing in class. Okay? So that's an example of what a StudyCast may sound like. Now, in part 3, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm going to show you how a couple different ways that you can actually record a StudyCast. So we'll see you in part 3.